A big win in Arizona, the resurgence of Terry McLaurin, Devontae Adams to DC, and the Cleveland Browns preview. Let's have a podcast. Hey there, good evening, Commanders fans, and welcome to another episode of Commanders Gridiron. I'm your host, Steve Lockman, where we talk all things on the field, off the field, Commanders football. Luckily, we're winning, we're moving. There's so much good energy and vibes around our team that there's not a whole lot of stuff to talk about off the field. So, fortunately, we don't have too much to start off our program as we always do with off the field stuff, other than the fact that just for some roster information, we signed guard Marquise Hayes and safety Sheldrick Redwine to the practice squad today. In all honesty, I know that there's a lot of movement going around, teams signing guys off of practice squads, etc. For those of you that may remember KJ Henry, who was kind of a standout linebacker for us last season, filling in and was projected to make the team and be somewhat productive for us, actually got picked up by Cincinnati's team before the end of training camp. Actually got signed by Dallas today. So there's a lot of movement in the NFL between practice squads. We picked up a couple guys, in all honesty, don't even know who they are. They might make it depending on injuries and stuff like that. But hey, fellas, welcome to the team. As many of you know, especially if you're the diehard Commanders fan or the casual football fan like myself, you will know that basically we traveled as a team to Arizona and this past weekend where we played the Arizona Cardinals, gave them a big old DC whooping, 42-14. And before we dive into the game, scoring summaries and statistics and all that good stuff that we usually do when we recap games, it was certainly interesting that one of the things, and I don't remember it being utilized very much under Ron Rivera's tenure. I don't know how many other coaches do it with their teams, but Dan Quinn and staff, along with Adam Peters, decided it would be in the team's best interest to actually fly to Arizona at the beginning of the week. A lot of teams will travel either Friday, Saturday, depending on the day of the week that their game is. Obviously, if they have a short week, then they travel sooner, like Wednesdays if they're playing Thursday nights, etc. But Dan Quinn and staff wanted to get the team adjusted to the Arizona heat, wanted to get them adjusted to the time zone change days in advance before Sunday's competition, right? And this is probably one of the smartest things that they did. A, for the two reasons that I just alluded to. One being that they couldn't use the excuse of jet lag. Guys would physically get used to that time zone difference of 2 hours going out to Phoenix, technically Glendale, Arizona, where the Cardinals play their home games. And then as well as, getting used to that heat. Now, the stadium is air conditioned. I'm pretty sure they had the roof closed on Sunday, but, there's nothing like being out in the elements and practicing them in real time, right? So good move, good smart move, and it paid off dividends. What looked like it was going to be a possible shootout to back and forth between DC and Arizona, and obviously DC's rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels, former Heisman Trophy winner, I think 3 years now, 4 years removed, Kyler Murray, who actually had a serious ACL injury year and a half ago. So it looked to be a really good competition for these two teams. And basically you had Arizona coming in at 1-2. You had Washington coming in at 2-1. And as we know, Washington comes out victorious 42-14. But let's kind of break it down, right? And you kind of know that at first I kind of thought that, things were going to happen relatively quickly, and it did, right? So about halfway through the first quarter, not even quite halfway through the first quarter, Arizona struck from, with that short pass of 2 yards from Kyler Murray to Marvin Harrison Jr., the number 4 overall pick in this year's NFL draft, to make it 7-0. Washington turnaround, long drive down the field, caps it off with a B-Rob touchdown run of 6 yards Austin Seibert kick, tied 7-7. Wow, we might have a shootout. Could be, just that back and forth, touchdown, back and forth, field goal here, throw it in for good measure, right? But one of the things that I was kind of concerned about going into Sunday's game was how they were going to contain Marvin Harrison Jr. And, when they kind of put that decent drive together, especially with the, even though it was a short pass, touchdown pass to him, I was like, man, it could be a long day. But in all honesty, the defense kind of stepped up when it needed to. Offense does what they've been doing all season. I think it was 2 straight drives, maybe 3 in this game to extend the streak to 19 straight drives so far this season that we scored on every consecutive possessions. That was great because Tress Way hasn't putted in like 2 games in 1 quarter, basically 9 quarters of work that Tress Way collected a check for doing absolutely nothing. Our team MVP of the last 3 seasons probably, but not this year. So going into the second quarter, Washington turns around, gets a long run from Jeremy McNichols of 27 yards, go up 14-7. McNichols might sound like a new name to a lot of you guys and gals, and quite frankly, it is. He's actually the 3rd running back, and why he kind of got some of the bulk load of carries early on in the second quarter. Austin Eckler actually got taken out of the game for a concussion. Actually, didn't even play because of concussion. So McNichols got the nod to basically be the second corresponding running back with B-Rob. Did really well. I think it'll be super interesting to see how he's integrated into the game plan coming up against Cleveland this weekend, which we're going to talk about later on tonight. So, but he definitely made the most of his opportunity of playing time, right? And, it definitely showed with that touchdown run. So, look, we got 2 touchdowns in the game, both of them rushing. Cliff Kingsbury's offensive scheme so far this season, going basically 3.5 games so far, is basically we're going to pound the ball, and then, we're going to take some pressure off of that a little bit and take what we get in the passing game with JD5, right? And I think it's working fairly well. I mean, obviously, our record shows that we're 3-1. We haven't played some of the best competition so far this season. Keep that in perspective. But overall, it is working. As, some of our opponents so far this season have said, it's basically a glorified college offense. And it very well could be, but it's working, right? So, it's super interesting that this is what has progressed for us, and we carried it right into the second half. So, we got the ball back starting the second half, went down the field. JD does what he does, scored another rushing touchdown of 9 yards, go up 24-7. This is where you get really uneasy, because if you're a Commanders fan and you follow them on the regular or as diehard as I am, this is where you get really weird and kind of things can get weird. This is where the letdown starts. This is where the second half just basically flip-flops from the first half. Defensive coaches will go into the prevent defense, and you're playing, the opponent starts scoring all these points, and then you end up losing the game, right? But that's not what's happening, especially with this year's club. So we end up making Arizona punt. We turn around, get the ball back, stalled drive, field goal, 38-yard field goal by Seibert makes it 27-7. Can it really be true that we can hold on? We still got a quarter and a half to go of football. A lot of time left on the clock, especially when you got Kyler Murray, mobile quarterback, Harrison Jr., and, company, Connor's running the ball, who wasn't that bad. Just collectively putting that together could be a comeback, right? Speaking of James Conner, turns around and scores with 11 seconds left in the third quarter to make it 27-14. So basically now we cut it down to a 2-possession game from 3-2. So, you're not getting all warm and fuzzy yet, but you're starting to get there. Feel me? All right. Then what actually is super interesting, and, we're going to talk about it here later on in the show, but then JD basically hits Terry McLaurin for the dime in the corner of the end zone. From Jaden Daniels with a Zach Ertz 2-point conversion pass from JD to go up 35-14. And then McNichols scores again on a 7-yard touchdown run to cap it off at 42-14. So let's break down the stats. It's kind of we always do on every episode here at Commanders Gridiron. Offense racked up basically 450 yards of total offense to Arizona's 296. Jaden Daniels didn't look too bad. he was actually 233 yards of passing, 216 yards of rushing as a team. So that kind of really stands out to us, especially our beloved Commanders' beloved followers. One of the things we had last year that worked so much against us was our unbalanced offense, right? And what you're seeing here so far in the first, at least last 3 games, and you could even say going back to the season opener against Tampa, is a more balanced offensive play calling from new offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, right? That, look, JD should be up around 350 yards, but it's not a bad thing as long as we're winning. We're won 42-14. But when you see 233 yards passing, 216 yards rushing, almost identical, shows us that, hey, man, that is a balanced offense, to the point that we were racking up 6.7 yards per play to Arizona's 5.1. So, Arizona didn't do that bad. They just had a lot of drives that got stalled, penalties, ended up punting, turned the ball over once with a fumble. So a lot of things worked out in our favor. We had 29 first downs to their 17. Third down efficiency is where we excelled again for the second week in a row, completing 75, actually basically 9 out of 12 for 75% of our third down efficiency, which was huge because last year, once again, not only did we not have that balanced offense, but we just couldn't continue drives last year once we got to third down, or we had penalties that put us into third and long, whatever the case may be, but we just couldn't keep continuing drives. Once again, we did really well on fourth down. We were 1 for 1 in fourth down conversions, which, is a big momentum thing for teams and keeping that in those plays going, right? And basically we had 67 total plays of offense to Arizona's 58. Look, Tressway came into the game one time only did he have to punt. So he almost went another game without punting, but he did have to punt at least once, right? 5 penalties for 49 yards. This was something that almost came back to haunt us like it did last week against Cincinnati. That, I think it was early in the third quarter, late in the third quarter, we were on a drive and we were trying to go down the field. We were moving, penalty, have a gain, have a penalty, and I was like, man, like we're just shooting ourselves in the foot like we did against Cincinnati and even against the New York Giants, that, it's not going to be, we're not going to turn the ball over. We're not going to be, stupid stuff like that, like roughing the passer or unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. Like it's literally the false starts, the illegal formations, the bread and butter that we shouldn't be having penalties called against, right? But we did 5 penalties, 49 yards. JD did have his first interception. Look, let's be honest. For an NFL rookie, could he have gone 4 games without an interception? Yes. Was it just a bad throw, whether you're a rookie or a veteran? Yes. It was a little high, a little late behind him. McLaurin was going across the field, doing the in route, basically the drag across as the second option. It was behind him, a little high. Arizona guy was just there to make the play. It is what it is. But you know what? We got that first interception out of the way. It didn't end up hurting us too bad in the end of things. And, it kind of is what it is. So no fumbles this game, another good positive. And we basically won the time of possession battle at 33 minutes to 26. So, when you kind of look at it that way, JD did what he had to do. Okay, so he went 26 for 30 of 233 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 rushing touchdown, 1 interception, no fumbles. And I think that's really big for us, right? Is that, there were no fumbles. One of the other things that was super interesting was we gave up 0 sacks. There was a lot of complaints, a lot of speculation about our offensive line this year and how they are going to be. Bringing back some of the guys from last season, adding, the new center, the new left tackle. A lot of people thought the left tackle was going to be one of our biggest letdowns this season. And so far, these guys are doing great. I mean, look, in 4 games, I get it. We're only 25% of the way through the NFL season, and we haven't played the best of our schedule yet. But, when you go 2 out of 4 games and only give up 0 sacks out of 4 games, and the other game was like 5 and the other game was like 3 or something, it's day and night from last year when Sam Howell was getting sacked all over the field and scrambling for his life. So let's be honest, we'll gladly take it. It kind of is what it is, right? Um, Brian Robinson led the way on the day with rushing 21 carries, 101 yards, and 1 touchdown. Nichols had a really big contribution, 8 carries, 68 yards, and 2 TDs, right? What's kind of interesting, here we go again, that when we look at receiving, something we're going to talk about here in a little bit, was, Zacchaeus kind of led the receiving in yards, basically, with 85. McLaurin with 52. Noah Brown, who was picked up from the Texans in the offseason, with 26. McLaurin with the only receiving touchdown. That's kind of key right there, that at least we're getting McLaurin involved with 7 receptions, getting a higher number. Would love to see it around 10. Definitely had a chance to get some of those here and there. A ball into the ground, the interception, couple, so he had a couple more targets that easily could have been receptions. But I like to see the production out of him. Other guys that greatly contributed to the receiving, and kind of played big roles when they had to was, look, Zach Ertz, the guy that doesn't die playing tight end, whether it was all those years in Philadelphia, the years in Arizona, coincidentally, had the big 2-point conversion catch in the end zone in the fourth quarter, as well as, contributed with 3 catches for 22 yards. And he's kind of like JD's safety net when he's on the field. Between him and Bates, and even the running backs, were the slot receiver Luke McCaffrey, the rookie. Jaden just loves having those guys. Jaden's not afraid to go down the field. Went down the field a couple times, not as much as what he did in the game against Cincinnati with the deep bomb to McLaurin and twice the dime in the end zone and the long 67-yard pass. But we're gradually getting more comfortable with Cliff Kingsbury's playbook. We're, gradually getting better with, what that comfortability and what he's calling more NFL experience for everybody, not just JD, but the linemen, the wide receivers. And, we're going to start gelling. So as we look at the schedule going forward, and we're going to talk about it later on in our preview, we got a little bit of a gauntlet coming up, some games that we should win. 1 or 2 games that, look, on paper, we're probably going to lose. We might even get killed, but it's kind of what's expected with this season, right? So, but we'll hint at all that. So this week's performance from JD5 actually got him the player of the week. So basically he was the NFC player of the week last week. I think he was the NFC rookie of the week or something like that this week. So props to him. So as a result of the victory against Arizona this week, and we went 3-1, hello, top of the NFC East. So any of my Cowboy fans, Philly fans, and even Giants people, we got all of them out here at Out of the Box Sports. Between our Big Blue Power Hour with the New York Giants, them 215 boys on Wednesday nights, between Paul and his co-host Dave, and as well as our Sully Squad talking about the Eagles every Monday night. Let's just enjoy it. It might not last more than like 2 weeks that we're on top of the NFC East. It might last the rest of the season. Who knows? But while we're up there, we're going to enjoy it. The Cowboys have, basically they kind of always start out slow, pick up pace around the holidays, Thanksgiving, and then kind of make a push towards the end, right? Philadelphia's got some injuries, key injuries early. Not really sure what Sirianni and Hurts are doing right now, but they're always known, especially now that they got Barkley in the backfield, super solid weapon. And we still got to play them twice, along with the Cowboys twice. They can obviously make the push to go right up to the NFC East. G-Men, not so much, but we still got to play them again, especially in MetLife, right? So it'll certainly be interesting to see how things shake out in our division. But for the first time since 2011, the Washington Commanders, formerly the Redskins at that time, will actually start the season 3-1. That's actually a really long time ago. I mean, you figure what, 13, 14 years? Jaden Daniels, let's start throwing out some useless Jeopardy knowledge before we get to our topic of Terry McLaurin. Jaden Daniels has an 82.1% completion percentage through 4 career games. It's the highest completion percentage of any quarterback through 4 games since Tom Brady, 7-time Super Bowl champ, had a 79.2% 98% completion percentage through 4 games in 2007 when they actually won the Super Bowl that year. One of the things that was kind of interesting when we looked at the Arizona game and the recap and everything, that, we were talking about the defense, and the defense did just enough to help the offense get back onto the field. A couple of times they had long drives, were getting tired. You could tell, Arizona was kind of running a little up-tempo offense to not get the, have substitutions getting made and, keeping the defense on the field. You kind of just see that, right? But the defense kind of did what they needed to do in that, look, basically by the first 3 quarters of the game, Arizona's possessions was touchdown, punt, turnover on downs. They went for it and Washington stopped them. A punt and then a touchdown, basically at the end of the third quarter. So, as much as we jump on the defense, and that's kind of our weakest point right now, because, we're giving up a lot of rushing yards, and then consequently we were giving up enough, like a little over 100. But then, our secondary was Swiss cheese. Our secondary didn't do too bad this weekend. Still, definitely some stuff to work on. Definitely, it got better than the week before against Cincinnati. But then again, Cincinnati had the better wide receiving core in Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and company, right? So compared to what Arizona has. So you kind of got to take everything with a grain of salt. Kind of is what it is, and, we move on. But, one of the things that was super interesting, for those of you that follow social media, Des Bryant threw out something on social media, of all people. It says, quote, "I hate to have this tweet and notification, but if you really knew football and how the game has transformed, you would have known the Commanders was going to be a problem this year." Yay. Thank you. Coming from a former Dallas player. "I give a lot of credit to Coach Dan Quinn because he know how to get the right coaches, and he put his players in the best position to play some football. With that being said, basically, Commanders fans suck." But, just to get an acknowledgement from, former players, especially of opposing teams, kind of starting to get, the morning chatter of the sports talk shows nationally, whether it's Get Up, whether it's Colin Cowherd, whether it's First Take, whether it's whatever, never happened before this season. Never. Our team would never make discussion topics, would never make, other than just to be, when they went around the cruise to getting, game picks, like on game days, we weren't mentioned. So it's nice to have that conversation. It's nice to be, talked about and kind of explored somewhat, as far as, yes, a lot of it is because of our rookie quarterback. Let's not, sugarcoat things. It is because of JD5. But, collectively as a team, we're doing a lot better. We're 3-1 already, quarter of the way through the season. Let's keep it going. So the Commanders offense through 4 games, and, can we keep it up for the next 3 quarters of the season with a late bye, which I think we're like week 12, week 13, somewhere around like the first week of December, as our bye. That, so far, here's our NFL rankings from the offense, right? Completion percentage. Obviously, we're first because everybody talks about that. Jaden Daniels is 82.1%. Passing yards per attempt, 8.5. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's third in the NFL. So, as he gets more comfortable stepping up in the pocket, recognizing the pocket and everything, he's third in the NFL. Third down percentage and conversions, first in the NFL. Rushing yards, average of 169 for third in the NFL. Offensive points, we're averaging 30 points a game. One of the things that was super interesting was somebody asked when the last time that we put up 40 points in back-to-back games was actually like 2010, 2014, something like that is the last time. So 10 years or plus, right? Pretty impressive. Yards per game, we're 5th in the NFL. Yards per play, we're currently 4th. 3 and outs, the number of 3 and outs in the percentage, we're actually 2nd in the NFL. Good job, fellas. Turnovers, we're actually 1st in the NFL. We only have 1 so far this season in 4 games. And total offensive percentage, EPA, which is 67.5, we're 1st in the NFL. So all great stuff, right? Just awesome. Going into This weekend, we also, ESPN throws them up, CBS Sports, the whole 9 yards. Our power rankings, we moved up to 10 in the NFL out of 32. Bravo, bravo. We're in the top third. Last week, we were 19. So, look, as we kind of can keep winning the games we should, win a couple games that maybe we shouldn't, and then, hopefully gracefully lose some of the ones that we kind of know we're going to lose, like in 2 weeks against Baltimore. We'll kind of be where we need to be, right? So it'll certainly be interesting to see how that works. Kind of like I said, as you make the national media, get their attention and become on their talk sheet, their topic list, on First Take on ESPN, ESPN2, Stephen A. Smith's A-list, the top 5 NFL teams after week 4. We actually came in at number 5. Which when you look at the other 4, I can't argue with any of the other 4. I can't argue really with the order of them. Maybe some of the order. But, the other 4 are definitely better teams than us. We play, I think, at least 2, maybe 3 of them. The Vikings are at number 1 on his list. Chiefs at number 2. Ravens number 3. I think they might even be number 2 ahead of the Chiefs, especially now with Rashee Rice's season-ending ACL injury. And then the Detroit Lions at number 4. But he has the Commanders at number 5. And, look, they're turning heads, and they're doing what we need to do. Right now, also in the NFL, Jaden Daniels has a total QBR rating of 73.4 for 4th best in the NFL for all NFL quarterbacks. So, look, they're doing really well. But a lot of that is because of Cliff Kingsbury, the offense, and the resurgence of some of guys that were, I don't want to say holdovers because it sounds like, kind of like a derogatory thing, but, Terry McLaurin was one of the guys that didn't get cut, was brought over. He had the team leadership. He's great for the team culture, great in the locker room, stud production guy every year since he got drafted in 2019. And, look, Terry McLaurin accounts for 57% of the Commanders' air yards, which is the highest share in the NFL. So basically, when you look at air yards, it's like the yards that the ball is actually in the air, not the rack, the yak, the yards after catch, or total reception, total receiving yards, right? But in the air. So, when you look at all the great quarterbacks in the NFL today and all the great receivers, right now, 4 games, keep that in mind. We're only 25% through the season. Terry McLaurin leads that per the NFL, which kind of makes it wonder, is this Terry McLaurin's resurgence? Terry McLaurin, other than 2019 when he got drafted, he only had 919 yards, 81 yards shy of 1,000 in his rookie season. But every year since then, he's had at least 1,000 yards. Even the fact that he's gone through like 17 quarterbacks or 14 quarterbacks or however many the number is since he got drafted, he's found a way to produce. A lot of people will argue that he hasn't been, the number 1 guy. He's not elite, and I've even come on here to say, look, I can make the argument that he's the best number 2 receiver in the NFL. If you put him on some other NFL teams, he would be their number 1 also. If you put him on some other NFL teams, he would easily be the NFL's best number 2. Kind of see the point? There we go, right? But let's delve into a little more about Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin's only 29 years old, stands 6 foot nothing, and he got drafted in 2019, right? Like I said, he had 19 yards then, but then followed that up with 1,100 yards after that, a little over 1,000 after that, 1,200 yards after that, and 1,000 yards season last year. So he definitely can make the production. I think now that he has a substantial quarterback, and as long as, knock on wood, cross your fingers, get your rabbit's foot, nothing happens to JD this season, and he stays healthy, and you have that longevity, kind of like, and the reliability like we had with Kirk Cousins starting every game, you should easily see Terry McLaurin rack up 1,500 yards. Easy this season. So far in 4 games, it is a little bit down, but I think a lot of that is because we're still kind of filling each other out between JD, Cliff Kingsbury, Terry McLaurin, right? Even going into the Cincinnati game, which, was great because, he had 100 yards receiving against Cincinnati. Cliff Kingsbury came out right before the Cincinnati game and said, look, I got to do a better job. We got to do a better job of getting Terry McLaurin more involved in our offense. And, look, let's be honest. The game is going to go by way of 3 people: Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin. Maybe not in that order, but those three guys all need to be a big integral part of the offense in order for us to secure a victory week after week. So I think what you're going to end up seeing is, more attempts at getting McLaurin involved into the game plan, more targets. Look, if you put that thing within 6 feet of Terry McLaurin, he's going to catch the ball, whether he's stopping and turning around, whether he's running the stop and goes, whether he's doing the cross patterns. It don't matter what he's doing. Whatever route he's running on that 9-route tree that's being called, he's going to run it. He's going to get open, and more than likely, if you put it in the vicinity, it'll get caught. So, I think we are going to see that resurgence of Terry McLaurin this year for the Washington Commanders. One of the things that was super interesting, and I alluded to it in the recap of the Arizona game, the fact that we had 0 sacks, was a list came out of the lowest pressure rate allowed by rookie offensive linemen, because we know that we drafted Brandon Coleman. I want to say 3rd round, 4th round, 3rd round, I think he was. Big dude, big stud, right? That, so far, because of the low sack rate, low pressures, this guy actually has a 0% pressure rate allowed so far this season. Keep in mind, we're only 4 games in. We've only played, 2 of our games have probably been crappy teams. There's a reason they both picked in the top 7, 8 of this year's NFL draft. I get that. But you're still going up against basically large amounts of human mass that get paid millions of dollars every year to do what they do, right? So these guys got to be good at something. But to give up 0 pressures, especially as a rookie offensive lineman in today's NFL, that's pretty big. And it actually came out to, I think, based off of the numbers of how many rushes he had seen, he's actually number 5, but there's 5 rookies that basically have 0%. So, bravo to him. Real quick before we switch gears, let's talk about our sponsor, Jason Fine, aka Attorney Big Al, here for all of your legal representation and needs, specializing in motor vehicle accidents, slips and falls, workers' compensation, personal injury claims. Has 3 convenient office locations throughout Pennsylvania and New Jersey, with 1 located in Philadelphia, PA, 1 in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, 1 in Pittsburgh, PA. You can reach Jason at 1-800-HURT-123. Give him a call. Tell him you saw the reference here at Out of the Box Sports. Remember, if you don't win, he doesn't collect. He'll gladly help you out with legal advice and legal representation. That's Jason Fine, a.k.a. Attorney Big Al, at 1-800-HURT-123. So as we kind of go into the second half of the show tonight, we're going to go through some of these topics pretty quick. But one of the things that kind of started making news actually today, well, more so yesterday into today, and it's kind of interesting because the Commanders reached out before the season started, is there's a bunch of tension, bunch of issues out in Las Vegas. Surprise, surprise, right? That apparently all is not warm and fuzzy with Davante Adams, who was formerly of the Green Bay Packers and went to Vegas. Between him and the Las Vegas Raiders, head coach and Antonio Pierce, quarterback Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, that whole shit, whatever. Then apparently this morning came out throughout today that he informed the team that he would rather be traded. So Las Vegas is officially out shopping him, or kind of seeing what the interest is from other teams. So Vegas is gauging the interest and appears to be preparing to trade him. Last night, head coach Antonio Pierce hinted at this, basically in one of his, media sessions after practice yesterday. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the 6-time Pro Bowler wide receiver Davante Adams. So then the question begs to be asked, is DC going to make the push to get that other high-profile wide receiver into DC? They tried the back and forth, whatever there was, didn't come to fruition, obviously, because he signed a long-term extension. But was it all smoke show? Was there actually some solidity to the Brandon Ayuk stuff possibly coming to DC? Who knows? Whatever. The phone calls were made to at least gauge it. They wanted a first and McLaurin first and second, whatever. DC said no, and basically this. But it kind of looks like the Devontae would be enticing, right? But then you got to keep in mind, look, as there's a lot of teams that are going to need wide receivers. Kansas City's going to need a wide receiver, especially now that Rice went out the other night with the ACL injury. The good news about that, though, is Las Vegas is not going to trade Adams to a divisional rival in the Kansas City Chiefs, so it kind of takes them off. Depending on how the things go, DeAndre Hopkins could become available at the trade deadline in Tennessee. Amari Cooper in Cleveland, and the list kind of goes on and on and on, right? Kind of like it always does. However, the trade deadline was actually moved back a week this year in the NFL. Coincidentally, for those of you that want to have some good news, on an eventful day, the NFL trade deadline is actually the day of the federal elections, Tuesday, November 5th. So it should be interesting following the elections, following the NFL trade deadline moves, and everything's going to happen because there's always people that move at the NFL trade deadline, especially on that Monday or Tuesday. So it'll be interesting. But ESPN sources have the Raiders that inform teams that they would consider trading Davante Adams for a package that would include a second-round pick and additional compensation. Now, a couple things we got to keep in mind as we take a look at this, right? Davante Adams is going to be 32 years old. So he's getting older. He's actually not playing this week. I don't think he played last week. I don't know. Ken might be able to tell me. He hosts the Black and Silver Lair, covers the Las Vegas Raiders, our weekly show here at Out of the Box Sports. But I know he didn't play this past week. So he is 32. Does kind of start to have those injury bugs, right? Does come right now. His cap hit for 2024 is $25.3 million. Doesn't really sound a lot for a top tiered quarterback, but then you got to break it down, right? That, look, at the end of 25, actually has a possible out in 2025, which kind of makes it nice. And let's be honest, a lot of times when players move from team to team, there's an interest in for teams not to carry over the current contract. They rework the contract. Sometimes they have a contract extension, that kind of deal, blah, 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 blah. But if he stays on the current contract, his total cap hit for next season in 2025 would be $44 million. In 2026, it would actually be $44 million, basically the same amount. And then in 2027, when he's 35 years old, he would actually become an unrestricted free agent. So with us having the amount of cap space that we do currently, it wouldn't be out of the question, hey, I could see Adam Peters putting next year's second round pick, next year's fourth, or even, a 26th third or something like along that line in for Davante Adams. On a condition of a rework contract extension, what they've done before. If you pair him in with Terry McLaurin and, rookie Luke McCaffrey and Noah Brown and stuff like that, it would instantly make the wide receiving room better. Is it the best option out there available? I don't know. Like I said, there could be Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns who would be way cheaper. DeAndre Hopkins, who is kind of age-wise in between Davante Adams and Cooper, bigger cap hit than Cooper, less than Adams, kind of that deal. So, who might fit the system the best? Who is less injury prone? It might be Hopkins out of those three specifically. Who can stay out of trouble? Cooper has a problem of doing that, stuff like that. So it's certainly interesting to see, kind of what may shake out, where Davante might go. Does he go back to the Jets, with Aaron Rodgers? Does another wide receiver needy team pick him up, want to pay all that money, and even restructure it so it's a little more friendly, but then he still gets that much money? We don't know. Speaking of the Raiders, they actually played the Cleveland Browns in Las Vegas, beat the Cleveland Browns 20-16 this past Sunday. And, Cleveland drops to 1-3. Raiders went to 2-2 with that victory. It's basically touchdown here, touchdown, field goal, that kind of stuff, right? And one of the things that comes out, look, Cleveland is a really good team. Cleveland has the potential to be a really good team. Deshaun Watson came out 2 weeks ago and said, hey, look, I'm not a running quarterback. I still think he's a mobile quarterback. I don't know if that was just if he was being 100% honest, if he was just kind of trying to get the reporters off his back. Like, I don't know what he was doing, but he made the comment, right? He's like, I'm not designed to run. I'm not running design plays, run design plays. Basically I'm a passing quarterback. So that might be well for us this coming week in Landover. Home game against Cleveland, right? But last weekend against the Raiders aren't too shabby, but they were without Max Crosby last week. Deshaun Watson only went 24 for 32, 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So Deshaun Watson, that's kind of been his MO so far this season, right? Like, the offense hasn't really gone anywhere. The rushing hasn't been really good. Look, they only had 241 total yards. They only had 149 passing yards, and they only had 92 yards rushing. Right now, rushing is stopping the rush is kind of our thing right now, right? We keep people to like 100 yards or less. Passing is usually our Achilles tendon right now, our Achilles heel, right? Cleveland only got 150 yards. Cleveland might get a little bit more. Depends on if the tight end is still out. Njoku next weekend. Not sure. Haven't seen anything about him. Right now, we should be getting Austin Eckler back for the Cleveland game. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how that works and what happens, right? But, the Las Vegas Raiders only gave up 152 yards rushing to Cleveland. So they put some kind of a little running game together. They're not all that bad at the running game. They have some skilled players on offense, and they have some studs on defense. Look, they have one of the best corners in the NFL, Denzel Ward. They have one of the best defensive edge rushers in Myles Garrett, absolute stud. Throw in a couple other awesome dudes on defense, and it could be problems for us. Now, it is at home. The energy is going to be high, and, we're going to see what happens when Cleveland comes to town on Sunday. But we should be able to match them, kind of like what we did with Cincinnati. I think that's kind of what we're going to see, with Cleveland, right? It's going to be a home game. We're not on the road. We're not all hyped because it's Monday night. So this is one of those games where we have to take it on paper early before the season started. We weren't projected to win, right? But for the way we're playing and the way we're progressing week after week, we can win this game against Cleveland. Cleveland's 1-3 in the AFC North, sitting third right now behind the Steelers and the Ravens. The Ravens, who are playing really good now, are here the last 2 weeks. Are actually 2-2. Steelers lead that division at 3-1. So, look, the Browns are on a 2-game losing streak. Can they turn around and pick it up and change that? On Sunday, they could. They have the potential to do it. But for the way our offense is going, and it's a matter of like strike first, strike often, I think Washington has the potential to come out victorious against the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. Look, we're 3-1 for a reason. We haven't played the greatest of teams, but we haven't played complete scrubs either. Kind of makes sense. Clear as mud, maybe, right? But, we got to see where things are going. It's super interesting that, this week in the power rankings, Cleveland actually fell from 23 to 27. So they're actually going downward. Their biggest issue on defense over the last 2 weeks has been missed tackles. The Browns defense hasn't looked like this elite unit that it was in 2023. Like I said, when you had, one of the top 5 cornerbacks in Denzel Ward, sack masters, havoc creator, and Myles Garrett and some of the other guys. The issue has become, especially for them on defense, is on the ground. Cleveland's allowing a 2.2 yards after contact per rush, which is the worst in the NFL. A lot of guys are going in with their shoulder trying to lay that big hit. And, look, we got to wrap them up and kind of stop their momentum, is what Myles Garrett says. So, with our rushing attack, hopefully we get Eckler back, which all signs are pointing to that we will against this game. But between McNichols, B-Rob, and Eckler in our rushing game, and you kind of balance that out with JD5, you got to think that, Washington's going to come out on top against the Cleveland Browns. So, let's call it here tonight that, look, I think Washington goes to 4-1 against the Cleveland Browns, stays at top of the NFC East for at least one more week until we go to Baltimore the week after, which we're not looking ahead to because I think Cleveland can definitely be a handful. But if we kind of keep playing the way we are, progressing the way we are, Washington's going to put up another 30. It's kind of been our MO lately, especially against some better teams. Look, Arizona isn't that shabby. Yeah, they picked fourth for a reason this past season. But they're super competitive, and they got a mobile quarterback. Kyler Murray is actually more mobile than Deshaun Watson is. But I kind of still fear that might be what happens is, depending on if we can contain Deshaun Watson, right? But I think, let's say, man, let's call it 34-20. Cleveland's going to score some points. I think they're going to score more points than what Arizona did. So let's call it 34-20 DC over Cleveland. Before we close out tonight, something that, fourth week of the season, it always kind of falls under that way too early to predict, category for the season, but let's have some fun with it. If the playoffs were to start today after week 4, which we know they don't because we got a long way to go, 3/4 of the season yet to go, your beloved Washington Commanders would be the number 3 seed facing off against the Atlanta Falcons as the number 6 seed. So, look, if we kind of go with we can win 2 games, lose 1, then we're going to be pretty decent, right? Like 10, 12 win season. I kind of predicted before the season started we'd be right around 500. It's kind of what I thought. After training camp, I thought we might go down a little bit, 7-9 or 7-8, 7-10. Sorry, but we're doing even better than what I thought. But like I said, we have a little bit of a gauntlet coming up. Looking at the long term, we have Cleveland at home, Baltimore on the road, Carolina at home. Don't know what you're really going to get out of them. We should win that, but who knows? Depending on what happens with those. The Bears at home week 8, the Giants on the road at week 9, Steelers week 10, Eagles week 11, and then the Cowboys week 12. So with 3 out of 4 weeks right there in November are divisional games, big games, right? Our second New York Giants game of the season and our first Philly Eagles and Cowboys games of the season. So there 3, a lot of those games are going to be huge. Let's be honest. Regardless of what you think of them, Steelers are 3-1 and top of their division for a reason. So, that New York Giants game, Steelers, Philly, and Dallas 4 weeks in a row are going to be super hard. We're going to want some vengeance for the Chicago Bears after what happened last year on primetime. So, we have the potential of winning, man, let's call it winning 4 out of the next 8, right? If we can go 500 over the next 8, man, that puts us at 8 and 8-5, 2/3 of the way through the season. I'll take it. We might not end up that well, but if we can still hit 6 wins, 3 more out of the next 8, it's success for us because we're technically in that rebuild, right? So hey, let's shake and bake. Let's see what's happening. Last but not least, it's super kind of interesting because somebody threw it up. I probably never even would have thought about it, but hey, it is what it is. Somebody produced the draft order for 2025. If it were to happen today, and when you look at the top 8 teams, a couple surprises, couple that hey man, we see this year after year, right? But number 1, as everybody kind of knows, would be Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 2 picking would be Miami. Number 3 would be New England, who was basically number 3 or number 4 this past season. Number 4 would be Cincinnati, which is kind of a surprise. They're probably going to turn things around, not have to pick in the top 10, at least I hope. Number 5 would be Cleveland. 6 would be Tennessee. 7, Carolina, surprise. Not really. 8 would be the LA Rams. 9 would be Arizona again. So, it's just one of those things people put up way too early in the season. We still got, basically 13 games left to go. 14 games left to go in the season. 14 games left to go in the season. Throw in there a bye as well. So you got 13 to go. And, we'll see what happens. Moving on. Like I said, we got some hard games. Got some games we should win. Got some games we could win. Got a couple games that, look, if I compare it on paper, I look at what they're doing here recently, we're probably not going to win those. You just got to take those, make the best of it, and see what you can do coming out of those games, right? Looking ahead, Next week on Tuesday, October 8th, we'll be back to our normal time of 8:30 to 9:30. Thank you all for being patient tonight with me. I had a prior obligation tonight, which put me back about 30 minutes. And we try to make it a little bit shorter just so we didn't go the full time, because we got another show coming on here at Out of the Box Sports Network within the next half hour, 45 minutes. So I didn't want to run into those guys either. But next Tuesday, October 8th, we'll be back to our normal time, 8:30. We are going to recap the Cleveland game. We're going to preview the Baltimore game. We'll see if there's any kind of news coming out of this game that we can dig into, kind of like we did with McLaurin tonight. Do we add a wide receiver by next week? Who knows? Probably not, if I had to guess. Kind of knowing Peters and kind of what he's been putting out so far this past week. But we shall see. Maybe there's a little bit of off-the-field news. Who knows? But until next Tuesday, give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe. Commanders Gridiron, Out of the Box Sports Network, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Be a friend, tell a friend, say something nice. And until next Tuesday, have a good evening.